Commander Elias Vega tugged at the collar of his dress uniform, already uncomfortable 15 minutes into the reception. The orbital diplomatic station Concordia floated above a contested moon that both humans and Neradians claimed, making it the perfect neutral ground for negotiations, and the worst possible place for an engineer who preferred machines to small talk. "You look like you'd rather be fixing a plasma leak," said Admiral Patel, appearing at his side with 2 glasses of champagne. Elias accepted one gratefully. "Is it that obvious? You've checked your communicator 12 times in the past hour. The station won't fall apart without you for one evening. First time in 2 years we've had the entire Neradian delegation aboard. The pressure systems alone are perfectly fine," Patel interrupted. "Remember why you're here. We need our senior staff visible. These aliens respect technical expertise. Show them humans have plenty." Elias nodded and surveyed the reception hall. The Neradians were unmistakable, tall, with iridescent skin that shifted between deep purple and blue depending on the light. Their movements were fluid, almost hypnotic. Most stayed clustered together, but one stood apart, examining a holographic display of Concordia's orbital path. "Who's that?" Elias asked. "Kaida, their environmental sciences specialist, supposedly, arrived separately from the main delegation. Intelligence suggests she has the ear of their High Council." Before Elias could respond, Admiral Patel was pulled away by a human diplomat, leaving him alone with his champagne and orders to mingle. Taking a deep breath, he approached the solitary Neradian. "The station completes one orbit every 6 hours, he said, nodding toward the hologram. "We adjust thrusters constantly to compensate for gravitational fluctuations." Kaida turned, her large almond-shaped eyes fixing on him with surprising warmth. Unlike other Neradians he'd glimpsed, her facial expressions seemed almost human. "Commander Vega," she said, her voice melodic with an unusual accent. "Your reputation precedes you, the engineer who kept Concordia functioning during the solar storm last year." Elias blinked in surprise. "You know who I am." A smile curved her lips, revealing teeth that gleamed like opals. "I make it my business to know who keeps us alive in the vacuum of space." There was something disarming about her directness. Most Neradians were formal to the point of stiffness in diplomatic settings. "It's my job," he said simply. "And you do it exceptionally well, from what I understand." She gestured toward the viewport where the contested moon glowed beneath them. "Your species has remarkable adaptive capabilities. Building this station in disputed territory was audacious. Some would say reckless. I would say confident." Her skin rippled slightly, shifting to a deeper blue. Elias had been briefed that such color changes could indicate emotional shifts, but the specifics remained mysterious to human observers. "Are you enjoying your stay on Concordia?" he asked, attempting to steer toward safer diplomatic waters. "The accommodations are adequate." Her eyes sparkled with what seemed like amusement. "Though I find the environmental controls in the Neradian quarter puzzling. The humidity fluctuates unpredictably." Elias frowned. "That shouldn't happen. Our systems are calibrated specifically for Neradian physiology." "Perhaps you could examine them sometime? Unofficially, of course." Her smile returned, softer now. "I wouldn't want to file a formal complaint over such a minor issue." Warning bells should have sounded in his mind. Station areas assigned to foreign delegations were restricted to their maintenance crews, but something in her expression made the request seem reasonable. "I could take a look tomorrow," he heard himself say. "I would be most grateful, Commander." She touched his arm briefly, her skin cool against his. "Perhaps we could continue our discussion then. I find human engineering philosophy fascinating." As she glided away to rejoin her delegation, Elias couldn't help but watch her go. Admiral Patel reappeared at his side with a knowing look. "Careful there, Commander. Fraternization with the Neradians isn't technically prohibited, but—" "It was just professional courtesy," Elias insisted, though the lingering sensation of her touch suggested something more. "Just remember where your loyalties lie," Patel said quietly. "These negotiations are delicate. One wrong move could collapse 2 years of diplomacy." Elias nodded, but found his eyes drawn back to Kaida across the room. For a brief moment, she looked up and met his gaze, her smile returning with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. The environmental control panel in the Neradian quarter hummed softly as Elias made adjustments. He'd expected to find a simple calibration error, but the system showed signs of deliberate tampering. "Someone's been inside this panel," he muttered, more to himself than to Kaida, who stood watching him work. "Is that unusual?" she asked, moving closer. The scent of something like ocean spray and exotic spices emanated from her iridescent skin. "Highly, these systems are restricted access." He glanced up at her. "Did you notice anyone near these controls recently?" Kaida shook her head, her skin shifting to a lighter violet shade. "Perhaps one of your maintenance crew." "Maybe, but the override patterns didn't match standard maintenance protocols. He'd flag it for security later." Over the next hour, Elias repaired the humidity controls, aware of Kaida's intense observation. Her questions were surprisingly technical, demonstrating an understanding of engineering principles that went beyond what he'd expect from an environmental scientist. "You know quite a bit about station mechanics," he said as he closed the panel. "My interests are diverse." Her smile held a hint of mystery. "Perhaps you could show me more of your work. I've always found human adaptability fascinating." Against his better judgment, Elias agreed to meet her again. What began as a simple maintenance check evolved into regular meetings over the following weeks. Each time, Kaida requested to see different areas of the station, always with a plausible scientific interest, always with that same captivating smile. 3 weeks after their first meeting, they stood in the secondary propulsion control room, a restricted area Elias had accessed during his off-duty hours. He justified it as diplomatic courtesy, showing a curious scientist human engineering achievements. "These thrusters maintain our precise orbital position," he explained, displaying the control interface. "Without them, we drift into either human or Neradian territory." "Neutrality maintained by continual correction," Kaida mused, her fingers hovering over the console without touching it. "A fitting metaphor for our diplomatic relations." Her eyes met his, and something unspoken passed between them. The professional distance he'd tried to maintain had eroded with each meeting. When her hand finally reached for his, he didn't pull away. "You've shown me so much, Elias," she said softly, using his first name for the first time. "Things no other human would share with a Neradian." "I probably shouldn't have," he admitted. "Yet you did." She moved closer, her skin shifting to a deep, pulsing blue. "Why?" The question hung between them. Elias knew the answer but hesitated to voice it. Instead, he closed the distance between them. Their first kiss was tentative. Cross-species intimacy wasn't unheard of, but differences in biology made it complex. Her lips were cooler than a human's, with a slight electric tingle that sent shivers down his spine. When they finally separated, her skin had taken on a luminescent quality he'd never seen before. "I've wanted to do that since the reception," he confessed. "As have I," her voice had a new depth to it, "though my superiors would not approve." Neither would mind. Their relationship intensified over the following days. Stolen moments in rarely used corridors, private dinners in his quarters, conversations that stretched until station night cycle dimmed the lights. Elias found himself sharing not just station information but personal stories, his childhood on Earth's ocean habitats, his dreams of deep space exploration. Kaida reciprocated with tales of Neradian underwater cities and cosmic philosophies that mesmerized him. When they finally shared a night together, the experience transcended physical differences. Her bioluminescent skin created patterns of light that seemed to respond to their movements, turning the intimate act into something almost ethereal. "I'm breaking at least 6 protocols right now," Elias whispered afterward, watching light patterns still pulsing across her skin. "As am I," she replied, tracing a finger along his chest. "But some connections are worth the risk, aren't they?" In that moment, lying beside her, Elias believed they had found something rare and precious, a bridge between their species beyond diplomatic posturing. He had never felt so certain of another being's sincerity. It would be the last night he felt that way. The Auxiliary Defense Control Room required Elias' highest security clearance. No diplomatic personnel, especially not Neradians, were permitted inside. Yet as the door closed behind them, sealing them alone in the dimly lit chamber, Elias felt only excitement at sharing this final secret with Kaida. "This is impressive," she said, her eyes scanning the banks of monitors displaying Concordia's defensive capabilities. So this is how humans protect their neutrality. These systems are purely defensive, Elias explained. Shields, countermeasures, emergency protocols, we're diplomats, not warriors. Kaida circled the main console, her movements suddenly more measured, precise. Yet you maintain enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. Only if attacked first. He frowned at her tone. It's standard procedure for any station in disputed space. Of course, her smile returned, but something had shifted. She gestured toward the main system's display. And these control relays, they connect to the primary reactor. Yes, but they're isolated by quantum encryption. No external system can access defensive protocols without... Elias stopped, suddenly aware of how much classified information he was volunteering. Without what, Elias? Kaida asked, her voice soft but insistent. I shouldn't be telling you this. He took a step back. We should leave. Not yet. Something changed in her posture, a subtle straightening, a new rigidity. The warm smile that had captivated him for weeks vanished, replaced by cool calculation. You were explaining the encryption protocols. Kaida, what's going on? You've been very helpful, Commander Vega. Her voice had transformed, becoming crisp and formal. The temperature in the room seemed to drop as her skin shifted to a deep, cold blue he'd never seen before. More helpful than we anticipated, honestly. The realization hit him like a physical blow. You used me. I completed my mission, she corrected, withdrawing a small device from her sleeve. The High Council needed to understand Concordia's defenses before proceeding with negotiations. This was all intelligence gathering. The pain in his chest made it difficult to breathe. Everything between us. For a fleeting moment, something like regret crossed her features. Not everything, but that doesn't change what must happen now. She activated the device, which emitted a soft pulse. The defense monitors flickered momentarily. What did you just do? Elias lunged for the security alert, but Kaida moved with unexpected speed, blocking his path. Don't make this more difficult, Elias. The warmth had completely vanished from her voice. You've compromised station security by bringing me here. How will your superiors react when they learn you've shared classified systems with a Neradian agent? They'll know I was manipulated. Will they, or will they see a lovesick fool who betrayed his post for a few nights of cross-species intimacy? Her words were precisely calculated to wound. The data transfer is already complete. Your choice now is whether to add treason to your list of violations. Elias felt trapped between duty and heartbreak, his mind racing to understand how thoroughly he'd been deceived. The woman who had shared his bed just hours ago now regarded him with the cold detachment of an operative completing a task. What happens now? He asked, his voice hollow. Now, Kaida said, moving toward the door, you decide what matters more, your pride or the peace we've been negotiating for years. The alarm klaxons shattered the tense silence between them. Red emergency lights bathed the control room as the station's automated voice announced. Security breach detected. All personnel to emergency stations, initiating lockdown protocols. Elias lunged for the console, checking the status displays. The defense grid is rebooting. What did your device do? Kaida's composure faltered for the first time. This wasn't supposed to happen. It was a passive scan only. Well, something triggered the security protocols. The blast doors sealed with a heavy thud, trapping them inside. We're locked in until security overrides the emergency protocols. Her skin shifted rapidly between shades of blue and purple, revealing agitation. How long? Standard procedure is a full system sweep after any breach, at least 3 hours. He stared at her coldly. Plenty of time for them to trace the intrusion to this room. Kaida's device emitted a sharp beep. She checked it, her expression darkening. We have a much larger problem. The scan triggered a cascading failure in your defense grid. Secondary systems are interpreting it as an attack. That's impossible. The failsafes are compromised, she interrupted. My superiors, they must have modified my scanning device without my knowledge. Elias pushed her aside to access the emergency controls, confirming her claim with growing horror. The defense system was preparing countermeasures against a phantom attack, targeting the nearest non-station object, the Neradian diplomatic vessel. If those weapons fire on your ship, we'll have more than a diplomatic incident, he said grimly. We'll have war. For a moment they stared at each other, betrayer and betrayed, now facing a crisis that transcended personal pain. Help me stop this, Elias said finally. Why would you trust me now? I don't, but I need your access codes to disable the device completely, and you need my authorization to prevent your delegation from being vaporized. He held her gaze. Unless that was the plan all along. It wasn't, she said quietly, and something in her voice rang true despite everything. My mission was intelligence only, not provocation. Working together proved awkward but necessary. As Elias fought to regain control of the defense systems, Kaida worked to neutralize her device. The minutes ticked by intense cooperation. Why did you do it? He asked as they worked, unable to contain the question burning inside him. Was any of it real? Her hands paused over the device. My people are desperate, Elias. The resources on that moon mean survival for our colony worlds. She looked up at him. But using you, that was my mission, not my choice. That doesn't answer my question. I know. She returned to her work but added softly, the mission was always real, but so were some of the moments between us. A sudden power surge interrupted them as the lights flickered. The defense console displayed a critical warning. Weapons systems charging, target locked. We're out of time, Elias said, making a decision that could end his career. He input his highest emergency authorization code and physically disconnected the targeting relays. What did you just do? Kaida asked. Disabled the weapons by severing their connection to power. It's a manual override that can't be countermanded remotely. He turned to her. Your ship is safe, but I've just violated about 20 protocols. The relief on her face appeared genuine, but Elias couldn't trust his judgment of her emotions anymore. Security will be here soon, he said. They'll find us together in a restricted area during a security breach with evidence of your device. There's no explanation that doesn't end with me in detention and you expelled from the station, if we're lucky. Unless, Kaida hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. She reached into her garment and removed a small data crystal. This contains intelligence about a third faction that's been manipulating both our governments. Take it. Elias stared at the offered crystal. Why would I believe anything from you now? Because despite everything, she said, her voice finally regaining some of its earlier warmth, I don't want to see you destroyed by what I've done. The security interrogation lasted 18 hours. Admiral Patel's disappointment cut deeper than any accusation as Elias explained his actions. He omitted nothing except the data crystal, which remained hidden in his quarters. You compromised this entire station for what? A few intimate encounters with an enemy operative. Patel's voice was ice. You'll face a tribunal when we return to Earth. Elias accepted this without argument. What defense could he offer? He had betrayed his position, endangered the mission, all because he'd believed in a connection that was manufactured for his exploitation. After his release to confined quarters, he finally examined Kaida's crystal. If it was another manipulation, it was elaborately constructed. The data showed communications between a faction of Neradian military hardliners and human corporate interests, both working to sabotage the peace negotiations by forcing a conflict over the moon. According to the files, Kaida had been given her mission by official channels, but those channels had been compromised. The scan that had nearly triggered disaster was designed to fail catastrophically. She had been an unwitting catalyst for war. 3 days passed without word of the Neradian delegation, now confined to their quarter of the station. Elias waited for the tribunal preparations, expecting transfer to a detention vessel any day. Instead, Admiral Patel appeared at his door with a security team. The Neradian High Counselor has requested your presence, she said, her expression unreadable. Normally, I'd refuse, but this diplomatic situation has become complicated. They escorted him to the neutral conference room where the High Counselor, a Neradian elder whose skin had faded to pale lavender with age, waited alongside several human diplomats. Kaida stood to one side, her posture rigid, her eyes finding his immediately. Commander Vega, the High Counselor began, Emissary Kaida has made a most unusual confession. She claims sole responsibility for the security breach, stating that she manipulated you without your knowledge using pheromone techniques forbidden by our diplomatic protocols. Elias glanced at Kaida, who gave him the slightest nod. She has also provided evidence, the counselor continued, of a conspiracy to undermine our negotiations. Evidence that matches data anonymously delivered to human security yesterday. The crystal, security must have found it during a sweep of his quarters. In light of these revelations, both delegations have agreed to postpone any disciplinary actions until a joint investigation can be completed. The High Counselor's ancient eyes studied Elia's. Emissary Qaeda has formally requested that you participate in this investigation, given your unique perspective on events. It was a diplomatic lifeline, not exoneration, but an opportunity to salvage something from the disaster. Elias looked at Qaeda, searching for any hint of her true intentions. I volunteer my full cooperation, he said finally. The meeting concluded with tentative steps toward renewed negotiations. As the delegates dispersed, Elias found himself momentarily alone with Qaeda in the corridor outside. You sacrificed yourself, he said quietly. Why? The truth is complicated, she replied, her voice low but intense. My mission was real, using you was my assignment, but somewhere between deception and revelation I made a choice about who I wanted to be. Her skin rippled with subtle patterns he recognized from their most intimate moments. Some connections, even those begun in deception, create their own truth. I don't know if I can ever trust you, Elias admitted. I don't expect trust, Elias, not yet. She held his gaze steadily. But perhaps, in working together to expose those who would use us both as pawns, we might find something worth rebuilding. Security appeared to escort her back to the Neradian quarter, ending their brief exchange. As Elias watched her leave, he felt neither the blind infatuation of their early encounters nor the bitter resentment of her betrayal. Instead, something more complex took shape, a cautious recognition that the truth between them might be as multifaceted as her iridescent skin. The contested moon continued its silent orbit below Concordia Station. Like the celestial body they both claimed, Elias and Qaeda remained in a gravitational dance of opposing forces, attraction and suspicion, hope and hurt, neither fully yielding, neither completely retreating. Peace between their peoples, like reconciliation between their hearts, would require navigating dangerous territory with open eyes. But for the first time since her betrayal, Elias allowed himself to consider the possibility that something authentic might be salvaged from beautiful lies. Not blind trust, but a choice to seek truth together, beyond deception and duty alike.